Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Before we start balancing on treacherous beams high above medieval rooftops, pause for one sec. Tap that like button, subscribe if you're into late-night history rambles, and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and whether you're bundled up in bed, on a midnight commute, or secretly sneaking earbuds during a dull lecture. I read every time zone check-in, and it's weirdly comforting to know there's a sleepy little map of insomniacs forming beneath each video. All set? Good. Dim the lights. Cue up a gentle fan for background white noise, and imagine the faint smell of fresh-cut oak mingling with candle wax. Tonight, we're climbing 30, 40, sometimes even 200 feet above the muddy streets of a medieval city to crouch beside the men, and occasionally women and wide-eyed apprentices, who raised Europe's cathedrals stone by stone. We aren't talking about the stained glass saints or the bishops in embroidered gloves. We're talking scaffolding. Creaking wooden skeletons lashed together with hemp rope, populated by builders who ate, slept, joked, prayed, and occasionally burst into song while dangling above the void. Picture dawn breaking over 13th century Chartres. You're half frozen, wrapped in a wool tunic that smells like last week's rain, boots caked with lime dust, fingers numb until the sun finally nudges them warm. Down below, market stalls are clattering open, pigs snort from alleyways, and the cathedral's ground-level masons spark flint to iron to relight the lime kilns. But you, lucky you, are already 80 feet up, balanced on a 2-foot-wide plank, because the foreman said the northern transept needs another layer of ashlar before Sunday Mass. There's no elevator, no safety harness, no OSHA inspector worried about your precious vertebrae, just a faith-soaked sense that if God wants this church finished, He'll keep the wind merciful. Breakfast first. You fish a chunk of yesterday's rye bread from a leather pouch, knock the masonry grit off with a fingernail, and chase it with ale thin enough to hydrate, but strong enough to dull the part of your brain that keeps looking down. Most cathedral towns paid their stone crews partially in beer. Safe to drink, full of calories, mood-boosting, and the barrel at the scaffold base is free game until the waterer yells that the bucket's been hauled up. No pewter mugs here. You pass a wooden dipper hand to hand, each gulp a quick communal ritual. Germs? Those exist conceptually as demons, not microbes. If someone coughs blood, you mutter a prayer and rip up a sprig of angelica for luck. Tools clatter. The hewer next to you hefts his metal mallet, 4 pounds of iron on an ash handle, and taps a chisel until sparks hop off the limestone. Each strike sings like a church bell's baby cousin, ting, ting, ting. Multiply by 50 workers, and you get a syncopated chorus echoing across the nave void below. That rhythm is your shift's soundtrack, punctuated by the occasional thud of a dropped block or the foreman's voice carrying through a speaking trumpet. Hoist away on the south pulley. Some days, a traveling minstrel climbs up to sell verses about St. Denis or the latest crusade fiasco. You tip him a copper, and he weaves the mallet beats into his lute strumming while you set joints. Lunch arrives in wicker baskets hoisted by rope. Inside, cold peas and bacon pottage congealed into a scoopable blob, plus onions, more bread, and crumbly cheese smelling of barns. You eat with dusty fingers, letting mortar flecks season each bite. Some crews include a cook who perches on a lower platform with a brazier, brewing a thick stew laced with sage and marrow bones. Yes, fire on wooden planks 50 feet up sounds insane, but a pot of bubbling comfort makes morale soar and stops workers from climbing down midday. A bucket of sand sits ready to smother sparks. Primitive fire code, but better than nothing. Now the lull. Bellies full, sun blazing, eyelids heavy. Instead of descending and wasting daylight, you nap right there. No pillows, just roll a cloak beneath your head and lay flat on the plank. One leg hooked around a support post so you don't somersault into martyrdom. Below, people look like chess pieces, and the wind threads through tower arches, carrying gossip from the marketplace. A merchant swearing his pepper isn't diluted with dust. A friar preaching charity. Kids daring each other to spit and see if it lands on a monk's hood. Afternoon shift. The master builder, a man half architect, half magician, scrambles up to inspect courses. He unrolls a parchment dotted with charcoal geometry. Pointed arches, flying buttresses, sketched like bird wings. You squint at the cryptic lines, but he talks you through. Another cubit here, feather the joint there. Align the string to the plumb bob. He might slip into Latin, half chant, half math. Most workers can't read, but they understand chords, weights, and the sacred ratio that keeps a wall from slouching. Religion and engineering blur. Every mark of his stylus feels like scripture. Someone starts humming Veni Creator Spiritus. It drifts along the scaffold and sticks like wet mortar. Soon 3, 5, 10 voices join, not quite in harmony, but earnest, raw, echoing across stone ribs. Singing keeps lungs strong and minds off vertigo. Plus, the bishop pays bonuses at Christmas for crews with pious reputations. Back in town taverns, skeptics joke that builders sing more to drown out the foreman's curses than to praise God, but still, the acoustics are divine. When a chord swells under the vault, even you believe angels are tuning along. Late afternoon, and the carpenters show up, big-shouldered, pine-scented, hauling new planks. They wedge themselves between stone teams, driving pegs, tightening ropes, extending platforms upward so tomorrow's dawn sees you another 10 feet closer to heaven. You trade gossip. A mason boasts of carving a gargoyle that looks like his mother-in-law. A carpenter brags his oak beam came from a royal forest reserved for warships. Everyone exaggerates, everyone laughs, everyone sparkles with lime dust that turns sweat into chalky stripes down their cheeks. Quitting bell? There isn't one. The sun sets, torches are lit in iron baskets. If a deadline looms, you keep going by firelight. But tonight, the foreman finally waves his flag. Descent time. The ladder creaks. Your thighs tremble from 12 hours of bracing. Each rung smells like pitch and old fear. At the bottom, someone hands out thick wedges of dark bread smeared with lard. Your supper to go. You swallow it while trudging to the dormers over stables provided by the chapter house. Bed equals straw tick shared with 2 other workers, boots as pillows, a moth-eaten blanket whose lice bite warmer than frost. Before sleep, you rub bruised palms with goose fat and whisper thanks you didn't fall, didn't crush a foot, didn't slip a chisel and split a skull. Outside, cathedral walls loom black against starlight, looking almost finished, but you know better. Tomorrow you'll be back on the ribs, coaxing stone to defy gravity. It might take 20 more years, a lifetime, maybe 2. You probably won't live to see the spire crowned, but that's fine. People will stand beneath colored glass you never touch and feel small in the best possible way. Your fingerprints, lime-etched, calloused, will hide inside mortar seams, anonymous yet eternal. That's the deal. Trade a body's sweat for a soul's monument. All right, cinch that imaginary leather belt, flex your stiff fingers, and follow me up a ladder polished smooth by 1,000 fearful palms. It's still dark, first cockcrow, yet the cathedral site already buzzes like a beehive preparing for sunrise inspection. Torches hiss in sconces, throwing orange ripples across wet stone. Somewhere below, the sacristan rings a handbell to wake the choir boys, and that thin, tinny clang climbs the unfinished nave like a nervous sparrow. You rub grainy sleep from your eyes with one lime-dusty knuckle and inhale lungfuls of chill air that tastes of wood smoke and distant pigsties. This is first shift, the twilight bracket between yesterday and today, where builders earn a bonus for starting before dawn. Officially, it's piety, rising with the Angelus. But everyone knows the real reason. Beat the midday heat that warps wooden forms and makes lime mortar crust too fast. At the foot of the scaffolding, a half-barrel of oat gruel bubbles over a hearth ringed with bricks. The cook, nicknamed Goose Grease Giselbert, ladles the thick paste into chipped wooden bowls. Each portion is brightened by exactly 3 raisins, metric of the 13th century, and a drizzle of last year's honey. You slurp it while shifting from one leg to the other, trying not to think about the upcoming climb. The gruel is bland but comforting, sliding into your belly like warm plaster filling a crack. Over by the supply cart stands the rope boy, 12 years old and wiry as a willow switch. His job, coil and uncoil lengths of hemp, keep knots honest, and sing high notes during Mass when the choir is short a soprano. Right now he's dozing against a wheel, hood up, mouth open. Someone flicks a breadcrumb into the yawning target. He startles, blushes, swears he was just praying. The older masons chuckle, half teasing, half protective. Apprentices are the future hands. Keep them alive, you keep the dream alive. Time to ascend. You hook your toolkit, a leather satchel bulging with chisels, a square, and a bone-handled mallet onto your shoulder. The ladder sways like a mast in rough seas, but rhythm is everything. Step, breath, clench, release. 10 feet up, the stench of the streets fades. 20 feet, the first pink smear of dawn slides under the city's slate roofs. 40 feet, you hear nothing but your heartbeat and the scaffold creaking in Gothic counterpoint. At the landing platform, the world tilts. Planks sag underfoot, bowed from weeks of weather. You test each one with the cautious toe tap of a man who's met gravity's cruelty before. There's the patch where Alan the Impatient fell last month. He lived thanks to landing in a cart of sheepdung, but he limps now. And the joke is that the cathedral's first miracle involved muck and a mason's backside. Today's task: carving tracery for a rose window that won't be glazed until your grandchildren's era if plague doesn't set schedules back. The master has chalk sketched the day's quota: 6 quatrefoils, 2 lancets, one unforgiving spiral representing the eternal. You kneel on burlap to cushion the joints and brace a limestone slab between oak blocks. With gloved fingers, you trace the design, trying to memorize the flow before the first hammer blow makes everything permanent. Thunk clink, thunk clink. The rhythm settles you. Sparks jump like fireflies as chisel kisses stone. Soon you find that builder's trance, where time folds and the line between body and craft melts away. You think of the window as you'd think of a friend you'll never meet, someone who will one day catch the sunrise and scatter it across flagstones where pilgrims kneel. Mid-morning break. The waterer hauls up a leather bucket brimming with weak ale. Steam still rises off your shoulders in the crisp air. One draught quenches and revives. And because humans are humans, gossip follows hydration. "Did you hear?" whispers Bernard, the forehead scarred. "The bishop's bringing in Phoenician glassmakers. Real color, not just stained with local iron." "The nations?" snorts a carpenter, rasping a beam smooth. "Fine, but their pay could feed 3 of us. Let them bring gondolas, too. We'll flood the crypt for them." Laughter ripples. Even jealousy can't drown pride. Foreign artisans mean the project is famous, worth flaunting. You toast imaginary Italians and get back to work. Down below, wagons arrive from the quarry. Each block of stone bears a mason's mark. Secret signatures shaped like little crosses, hammers, even stars. You have one too, an angular fish carved small near a joint. No vanity here, it's bookkeeping. After payday, the tally clerk will count marks and dole out coins accordingly. Your family depends on that tiny fish swimming unseen beneath flying buttresses. The sun climbs. Heat creeps along the wood. Resin bleeds from planks, sticking to your knees. To distract from discomfort, somebody starts a work song. You know the one, half psalm, half tavern ditty. Voices join, some gravel low, some sweet, weaving through hammer strikes. The acoustics of unfinished walls turn the melody into a rolling choir. Below, townsfolk lift their heads, momentarily tricked into thinking angels practice overhead. Then a shout, "Stone up!" You jump aside as a block ascends, swinging from a wheel and axle gin. It's powered by a treadmill crane. 2 brawny men walk inside a giant wooden hamster wheel on the deck below, their weight winding the rope. Each step of theirs lifts half a ton of rock. The thought is dizzying, but you trust the wheelman more than your own heartbeat. Accidents happen, but rarely because they faltered. If one slips, the other braces and prays his legs can hold. Faith bonds you stronger than nails. Lunch arrives in wrapped packets, rye trenchers filled with salted herring and leeks. You sit with legs dangling, cathedral bells booming noon far above your head because the tower tops out beyond finished portions. Bite by bite, you chase fish with sour cider, squinting at clouds shaped like ships. Mariners claim those clouds foretell weather. Masons decide they look like dragons. Somebody suggests carving a dragon gargoyle near the nave gutter. The master overhears and merely nods, practical and symbolic. Gargoyles spit rainwater, but also ward off evil spirits. Plus, donors adore them. A wealthy tanner just paid for one modeled on his wife's lapdog. She'll never recognize it, though. Stone exaggerates snouts for water flow, turning pup into gargantua. Afternoon slump. Heat makes mortar sluggish, chisel lines less crisp. You switch tasks, block dressing in the shade. There's a meditative pleasure in rasping stone edges smooth with a dragoon file, hearing the rasp like distant waves. Occasionally, you glance across the void to the carpenters raising temporary roofs over unfinished aisles. Their axes thunk, chips fly, and the wood smell reminds you of winter fires. A commotion. The master builder climbs up, robes billowing like sails. He carries a brass astrolabe, a gleaming circle, a universe in metal. He uses it to measure sun angles, double-checking alignment of piers. Geometry is theology here. Proportions echo divine harmony. When he's satisfied, he nods approval, and you feel lighter, as though the whole scaffold just exhaled. Soon shadows lengthen. A cool breeze dries sweat into salt rime on your tunic. Evening prayers echo from the cloister, bells ringing tierce, then none. You finish the last quatrefoil, brush away debris, and carve your fish mark in the seam's shadow where only a fellow mason might notice. Immortality, hidden in plain sight. Descent again. Ladders are busier now, everyone eager for stew and straw mattresses. At the base, goose grease has transformed leftover gruel into a thick pottage, laced with pork rinds and fistfuls of parsley. You eat standing up to keep joints from stiffening, chatting about local fairs, rumors of relics arriving, or that minstrel who claims he's seen London's half-built Westminster rising like a new Jerusalem. Night doesn't end labor for all. A skeleton crew stays aloft, torch-lit silhouettes against moonlit stone, to guard tools and wet mortar from mischievous townsfolk or prowling cats. You drew the short straw tonight. So after most mates shuffle off toward their dormers, you climb back, torch in hand. The sight at night is a different planet, silent, eerie, beams creaking like ship timbers, stars sprinkled through vaulted gaps. You walk the planks, checking ropes, tapping joints to be sure the day's mortar has crusted. During rounds, you find Brother Odo, the monk scribe, who sketches progress for Cathedral Chronicles. He's perched on a beam, parchment on his knees, lantern glowing like a captive star. He asks polite questions, stone weight, joint width, then rewards you with gossip from the scriptoria. Apparently, scholars debate whether new flying buttresses resemble angel wings or spider legs. Maybe both, you laugh. Odo notes that. Someday kids will read his chronicle and imagine builders as half saints, half spider tamers. Midnight. Your relief arrives, and you descend for real, muscles trembling with hungry exhaustion. Instead of the dormer, you slip to the riverside bath hut, really a roofed section of cold water where laborers scrub stone dust before Sunday. Tonight the water bites like ice. You dunk quickly, grit swirling away like miniature avalanches. Afterward, you wander home through narrow lanes. Lantern light paints warped timber walls golden. The city's asleep, save for a stray cat darting after mice and a drunkard serenading the moon in slurred Latin. At your door, you pause to look back at the cathedral skeleton looming high, ribs of wood and stone against stars. From here, it seems suspended in darkness, impossible, miraculous. You grin, knowing tomorrow you'll curse its weight again. Inside your shared quarters, snores rise like a fugue. Bass, tenor, wheezy alto. You crawl onto straw, pull a blanket that smells faintly of sheep, and close gritty eyes. But before sleep drags you under, you whisper a promise. Another layer, another song, another day closer to heaven, built by calloused hands. You won't finish it, few do, but you'll add enough that future travelers, centuries hence, will crane their necks, gasp, and feel small in the best possible way. If those travelers could hear you now, they'd know a cathedral isn't just stone. It's breakfast gruel with rationed raisins, jokes traded across perilous gaps, torch-lit geometry, and lullabies of chisels against limestone. Maybe that's the real miracle. Ordinary lives transformed into vertical prayers. The sky is silver gray, too early for dawn, too late for stars, as you shuffle down a rutted lane toward the river quay. The air smells of damp wood, wet wool, and those brackish eddies where fish flick their tails just to prove they're awake before you are. Ahead, a crane-like silhouette teeters on the bank. The jib boom of a loading derrick squealing in protest as it lowers thick hemp slings into a barge the color of old pews. This is where yesterday's architectural prayer begins its earthly journey. The quarry lies 6 miles upstream, a gutted limestone hill nicknamed Saint Calamity because every few seasons it claims a limb or life in exchange for its treasure. The masons worship the vein of creamy stone it offers, soft enough to carve, tough enough to shoulder a vault. But they never speak its name without a nervous sign of the cross. On the dock, you spot Hugo the barge master. He's as broad as the rudder he commands, beard crusted with river frost, voice like gravel poured from a bucket. He greets each arrivin' hauler with a curt nod, not wastin' syllables on anything that isn't about ballast or tide. You stamp your boots, approachin' him with a writ from the master builder. Need 12 blocks by event tide, or the nave wall stalls. Hugo eyes it, spits in the river for luck, then shouts orders at his deckhands. Planks slam, ropes tighten, and the barge shudders as the first slab settles against the hull. Each block weighs as much as 3 oxen, yet the water accepts it with a gulping sigh, rising just enough to cradle the burden. You feel the concealed mathematics here: buoyancy, leverage, faith. If any calculation is wrong, rope frays, tide turns, the cathedral loses a rib, and some poor soul gains a watery grave. A horn blasts upstream. The quarry convoy glides into view. 4 flat-bottomed rafts lashed in a train, pushed by a pole-wielding crew whose shoulders ripple under coarse linen. They sing to pace their strokes, a low chant in Occitan about a widow who marries the sea and feeds it her tears. The song is haunting, but the rhythm keeps them synchronized, and synchronization keeps the cargo off the riverbed. Let's jump routside, boots skidding on dew-slick boards, to follow a teamster named Isabeau. She's rare here, a woman in leather breeches, whip looped at her belt, hair braided so tight it looks carved. Her ox pair, Moon and Abbot, clump behind, hauling an empty cart up to the quarry for another load. As she passes, a young apprentice gawks. Isabeau winks and tosses him a dried plum. "Fill your belly, not your eyes, little falcon," she laughs, and the boy nearly swoons. She's legend. Once patched her own arrow wound with wax, then delivered a cart of slate before collapsing. People whisper she has more grit than the stone she carts. You hitch your ride on her tailgate. The road winds through beech woods where dawn birds rehearse chirps that will blossom into full chorus an hour hence. Conversation bumps along with the cart, sometimes gossip, the tanner's daughter secretly funding a misericord carving of her dog. Sometimes superstition, a green-eyed cat seen prowling the site the night Elon fell, omen of accidents. Isabeau spits through the cart spokes when bad luck's mentioned, a charm taught by her Breton grandmother. Soon, Saint Calamity looms, its exposed face striped with white veins. Terraces stepped like giant seats in an amphitheater. Echoes crash around as quarrymen swing picks, wedges, and iron bars called frogs. Dust hangs in sunbeams, turning air to holy mist. You taste grit on your tongue and feel it cling to sweaty skin. Before entering, everyone touches the carved relief fixed to a standing stone, an angel shielding a kneeling mason. It's half eroded, but the ritual's alive. Acknowledgement that here rock is king, and the only insurance policy is prayer. A foreman named Eligius, towering, bald, voice gentle as lamb's wool, greets you with a handshake that swallows your entire fist. He explains today's cut. They're freeing a 10-foot block destined to become a pier capital. He invites you to witness the ancient ballet. Wedge placement, mallet rhythm, patience. With each hammer strike, a high keening note rings, the pitch sliding downward as fractures spread inside the rock. Finally, a thunder crack. The block surrenders, tilting onto greased skids. Men cheer, but quietly, exult too loudly, and the hill may answer with a landslip. Lunch here is coarse but hearty. Barley bread smeared with garlic cheese and mugs of posset, warm milk beaten with ale and spiced with a single precious curl of nutmeg. You eat seated on discarded chisel bits, watching a younger crew mix powdered lime with river sand, future mortar. One prankster pretends to sneeze into the caustic dust. Everyone yells, "Cover your eyes!" He laughs, but truth is, lime can burn blindness faster than a curse, so jokes stop short of recklessness. Now the delicate part. Getting that colossal block onto a sled, down the serpentine quarry path, and onto a waiting raft. Our beau, the rope walker, choreographs. He's small, whipcord lean, can tie 30 types of knots in the dark. You help thread braided hemp beneath the stone, while he checks tension by ear. Plucks the strands like lyre strings, listening for pitch that signals proper stretch. Once satisfied, he nods, and the oxen lean. Sled runners screech. Pebbles dance aside. The descent is slow enough to measure in heartbeats, but one misstep could mean a runaway avalanche. Laborers jam iron shoes behind runners to break. Others heave from the sides with levers called quivering devils that tremble under strain. Midway, a wheelwright pauses to tap a wedge deeper. Tuck, 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 like knocking on the door of fate. Safely down, the block waits at the riverbank. A raft sidles up. Deckhands shift barrels of ballast to counterbalance. They've painted crude saints' faces on the barrels, Mary, George, Margaret, hoping extra eyes watch the cargo. Using a treadwheel crane, the block floats midair, swings, lands with a splash kiss that rocks the raft. Everyone exhales. Arbo scratches a tally mark on the beam. One more testimony of trust between flesh and fiber. You hitch a ride on the return raft. River breeze, cool sweat. Willows dip branches, trailing leafy fingers across the surface. A novice monk on board scribbles notes on wax tablets, sketching waterfowl for an illuminated bestiary. He asks if swans symbolize purity or vanity. You shrug. Say builders worry more about their droppings on fresh stone. He laughs, duly notes suspected iconographic ambiguity. And you decide scholars invent long words to hide their laughter from abbots. Approaching town, bells ring sext. Sun now high, drawing shimmer off water. Dock workers line the quay, ready to greet the floating giant. Among them, the master glassmaker from Venice, Brother Luca, watches with a jeweler's intensity, fingertips stained blue from cobalt ash. He tells you he's planning rose-pink panes using manganese, a color never before seen in this region. You imagine dawnlight pouring through such glass, painting nave columns like sunrise in liquid form. For a second, you forget exhaustion. Faith becomes technicolor. Unloading begins, but not before a brief ritual. A chalice of blessed water is sprinkled on the stone. The town priest mumbles Latin. A lay brother translates. May the Lord bind these stones as he binds the faithful. Honestly, most workers feel the Lord already has enough binding to do, but nobody objects to extra insurance. Block settled, you follow an ox cart back to the cathedral footprint. Afternoon heat warps the air. Smells shift. Tar pitch, sweating hides, cloves in a healer's poultice. The site looks alive, each trade a limb in a giant body. Carpenters jack-planing beams until curls of wood snow the ground. Blacksmiths pumping bellows, sparks, fireflies in gloom. Plasterers slapping wet daub, their trowels purring. Everywhere, men and women hum, shout, curse, pray in a dozen dialects. Yet somehow their discord breeds harmony. At the tracing floor, an outdoor platform smooth with fine clay, you spot Geometria, the only female architect's clerk within 50 leagues. She kneels, ivory ruler in hand, red string pinned by lead weights, laying out the nave vault's rib geometry full scale on the ground. You approach, fascinated. She explains how each rib curve follows a compass arc derived from the square root of 2, ad quadratum, representing the transcendence of earthly bounds. You pretend to understand. She smiles, stands, dusts her knees, and offers you a chalk nub. Together, you draw the same arc, hands side by side. For a heartbeat, the future ceiling exists only as a white whisper on brown earth. Back on the high scaffold by vespers, you chip away at the newly hoisted block. Stone dust turns your hair gray before age does. Yet that twilight light, slanted gold, makes every suspended motel like a miniature star swirling round your head. A passerby below might think saints hover, but it's just grit, breath, and backache conjuring illusions. Hunger gnaws. Supper tonight is pottage thickened with peas, enlivened by one wobbling egg per man, a seasonal luxury from the bishop's henhouse. You eat perched on a flying buttress arm still braced by temporary timber. Below, the marketplace quiets. Above, swifts zigzag catching mosquitoes. You trade jokes about which saint covers indigestion. Someone swears it's Saint Erasmus, patron of stomach ailments. Another bets it's Saint Bibiana, anything to do with drink. You agree to carve tiny stomachs on each next corbel, just in case. When darkness knots itself around beams, torches flare. A choir rehearses in the half-finished crypt, their voices floating through floor grates like incense. They practice Salve Regina, but you mishear the Latin into pastry references. Salve Regina sounds suspiciously like savory eclair when you're calorie-starved. You laugh silently, not wanting to disrupt holiness with hunger. Night shift again, but tonight you're on carving duty instead of guard. The master needs 4 gargoyle blanks roughed out before sunrise so the finer sculptors can detail them tomorrow. He hands you a wax maquette shaped like a twisted fish lion creature. Remember, he says, function first, channel water away from joints, fear second. You nod, mount the block, hammer poised. As you chip, memories surface. Stories your grandmother told of sea serpents curling round church spires, of devils perched on rooftops waiting to snatch sinful souls. You chuckle. Here you are, literally building those devils into stone so they'll scare off, well, other devils? Theology sometimes circles itself like a cat chasing its tail, but the craft obeys physics, and physics you trust. Water must flow away. Gargoyles make it happen while entertaining rumor. Hours crawl. Torch sputter makes shadows leap. Your own silhouette morphs into monstrous shapes across the nave. Finally, last chip falls, leaving a rough-hewn beast with a funnel mouth. You sign it with your fish mark, where tongue will later hide it. Utter invisibility to the praying public, yet record of your night's wrestle with limestone. Your relief arrives, yawning, clutching a loaf. You descend one ladder, then another, knees relaying complaints to the spine. At ground, the silence is deep enough to hear city rats ruffle hay. You fetch a small parchment scrap from your satchel, a letter from home delivered by the miller's boy. Child fever broken, wheat harvest looks fair. Send coin if you can. You fold it back, heart heavier than your tool bag. Stone may hold a cathedral aloft, but coin keeps children breathing. You whisper a pledge to carve 2 extra blocks tomorrow, overtime for the quarter pay bonus. Before turning toward the dormer, you walk under the risen arches and stop mid-nave. Moonlight pours through skeletal windows, turning mortar joints silver. You lay one hand on a pier, feel its cool throb like a dormant heart. Sometimes the stone almost feels alive, pulsing with every chant, every hammer echo, every whispered hope mortar sealed inside. You wonder, will pilgrims centuries ahead ever sense your presence? Maybe, if they listen during quiet prayer, they'll feel a faint heartbeat. Yours, Isabeau's, Geometria's, Hugo's, entwined forever in mineral veins. You step outside into night's hush. Somewhere a fox yips. In the distance, river barges creak in their moorings, ready for dawn's next load. The cathedral skeleton looms behind you, and you imagine it grown, vaults knit, glass blazing, bells shaking heaven's door. You feel small, yes, but also infinite, parceled into every stone. The wind bites sharper on the scaffold this morning, so sharp it whistles straight through the planks and sets every dangling tool jingling like a cloister bell at matins. Wrap your cloak tight, friend, and before frost nips your fingers clean off, flick that like button so the algorithm knows we're still breathing up here. If you're new to the crew, smash subscribe and ring the bell. Otherwise, tomorrow you'll look up and the whole spire will be finished without you. Tell me in the comments, are you listening from a pillow-soft bed or are you pacing a graveyard shift? Either way, we're about to climb higher than yesterday's sunrise, so grip the ladder and mind your head when the bells start swaying. Below us, dawn spills molten copper across the half-built transept. Cold breath plumes from every laborer, turning the site into a battlefield of tiny dragons. The foreman blows 3 blasts on his ram-horn trumpet. Work begins. Today's miracle? Raising the great crossing tower base, a hollow cube of stone that will one day shoulder the full choir of bells. Everything we've done for 2 years funnels into this moment. Hauling, carving, praying, bleeding. Fail now, and the nave collapses like wet parchment. Succeed, and people not yet born will crane their necks at our handiwork and forget we even existed. That's the bargain. Immortality for the building, anonymity for the builders. The first challenge is pure choreography, lifting 800-pound pier stones from ground to scaffold with nothing but muscle, rope, and a contraption called the squirrel cage. Imagine a wooden hamster wheel 10 feet across, lashed to a spindle, rigged to a pulley. 2 men walk inside the wheel, their weight turns the drum winds the rope hoists stones skyward as smooth as a psalm, at least in theory. In practice, the wheel creaks like it's remembering every sin since creation, and if the walkers lose step, the drum backspools, dropping the cargo and sometimes the walkers toward oblivion. You draw lots and end up inside the cage with Leonard, a Breton who claims he once wrestled a seal for a lady's honor. He smells faintly of fish and bravado. Inside the wheel it's dim, planks slick with yesterday's frost. Foreman shouts, "Step!" and you begin pacing, left foot, right foot, matching Leonard's stride. The drum groans, the rope tightens. Down below, the stone slab levitates. Crowd chatter hushes. Even the resident cat, Brother Whiskers, pauses mid-prowl to witness gravity being shamed. Halfway up, the wind snatches your breath. Your calf cramps. Leonard wheezes a sea shanty, "Heave, boys, heave," between gulps of cold air. Outside, carpenters guide the swinging block with pike poles, coaxing it like a stubborn mule. One slip, and the stone could swing into the nave wall, the very wall you spent last Lent repairing. Sweat blinds you, rope fibers squeal louder. You wonder if saints cover rope breakages specifically, or if that falls under general martyrdom. At last, a bell rings twice. Secure. You and Leonard stop walking, legs jelly. Hoisting crew locks the drum with an iron dog, then wedge oak pegs through holes. Below, applause ripples, brief because no one wants to tempt fate. You exit the wheel, knees wobbling, and a steward hands each of you a mug of warm cider spiked with rosemary and vinegar. Medicinal, they claim, tastes like regret mixed with apple skins, but it steadies hands. Now, on the upper platform, masons pivot the slab toward its slot on the tower wall. They use a system of crowbars and wooden rollers, humming a plain song to keep rhythm. The lead mason today is old Drogo, a man with eyebrows so bushy they qualify as thatched roofs. He taps the slab with a wooden mallet, listening for dull spots that betray internal cracks. Satisfied, he nods. Mortar buckets appear like conjured spirits. Mortar, by the way, is a beast all its own. This batch was slaked 2 winters ago. Quicklime drowned in pits, left to gurgle and hiss until it cooled from hellfire to workable paste. Mixed this morning with river sand, goose fat, and, some swear, an egg or 2 for luck. It now steams in the cold, smelling like wet seashells and barnyard. Apprentices ladle it onto the bedding course. Drogo's trowel spreads it smooth as butter on oatcake. Lower, lower, stone kisses stone, mortar oozes, joints align tighter than a miser's purse. Drogo steps back, squints, then taps a cedar wedge into a hairline gap with a practiced love tap. Perfect. While they set pinning irons, you slip along the scaffold to fetch more wedges. Passing the carpenter's corner, you witness an argument over beam lengths, measured in pieds de roi versus local feet. One carpenter insists the king's foot is God-ordained. Another retorts, God has bigger concerns than shoe sizes. They settle it the medieval way. Flip a knife. The blade sticks point down in the timber, leaning left. Local feet win. They laugh, but you note the tension. Math here isn't abstract, it's structural salvation. Below, the cathedral's heartbeat continues. The blacksmith's forge pumps orange glow under a canvas awning. Sparks spiral like fireflies as he forges cramps. U-shaped irons that clamp stones together. Each spark, he claims, is a sin burned away. By that logic, his soul must be spotless, because sparks spew like a comet tail. Across the yard, you hear the rhythmic thuck-thuck scree of master sawyers ripping oak into planks for the roof truss mock-up. They work in pairs, one atop a scaffold frame, one in a pit, the top dog and the underdog. See how old phrases survive? The underdog eats sawdust all day, but gets paid the same, proving wage equity is as old as wood chips. It's close to terse when the bell ringer, Brother Raymond, climbs the bell frame to test a newly hung bronze that arrived from Chartres. The foundry cast it last month, christened Vox Dei, Voice of God. Raymond hauls a rope, tongue swings, and a single note booms. Instantly, everything stops. Chisels freeze mid-tap. Oxen snort. Even foreman's horn is silent. The note lingers like sunlight on water, then fades into measured awe. Someone whispers, "If that's God's voice, he's in a fine mood today." Back to work. You help rig the next stone. But before the lift, Drogo orders everybody to the tracing floor for a surprise lecture by Master Guillaume the architect. Guillaume rarely speaks. His beard has more words than his mouth. He arrives wearing an ink-stained mantle, eyes alight. He spreads a parchment 4 paces long, a newly drafted plan for the vaulting pattern above the crossing. He shows intersecting ribs forming pointed arches, ogives, meeting in a boss carved with the tetramorph: man, lion, ox, eagle. He explains how the thrust channels into the piers we're erecting, allowing clerestory windows to balloon with glass rather than stone. In other words, math again saves souls by letting in more light. He rolls up the drawing, clears his throat. "Some say we build to glorify princes," he begins. "They are wrong. We build to trap daylight so it cannot escape before sinners see it." Murmurs of assent ripple. Guillaume's gaze lands on you. "And light rises only as high as stones allow." Translation: "Get back on the wheel, scrub." Lunch appears, trenchers of rye bread swamped with onion stew, plus a pot of mustard braised beans, so pungent it could exorcise demons. You sit on a half-shaped corbel next to Isabeau, the teamster, her braid dusted white with lime. She tells you Moon the ox threw a shoe this morning. The blacksmith fitted a temporary iron, but the beast is limping. Without Moon, the sled can't fetch tomorrow's column drums. You promise to ask the surgeon for comfrey salve. She thanks you with a slap on the shoulder that rattles bones. Conversation drifts to rumors. Some itinerant sculptor arrived from Burgundy, claiming he can carve angels that breathe. Drogo snorts, says if angels breathed, he'd charge them rent for scaffold space. The laughter warms you more than the stew. Afternoon shift ushers in the dreaded wind test. High above, temporary wooden falsework braces a half-finished arch. A gusty day can turn that arch into a trebuchet aimed at the cloister. So the carpenters climb with mallets, checking every brace pin. You accompany them, heart thumping. Up here, clouds seem close enough to comb. The city stretches tiny below. Rooftops patterned like fish scales, river shining like a sword. You slide along beams no wider than a boot. A carpenter named Pietro taps each pin. You listen for dull clunks that betray rot. One pin sounds hollow. Pietro curses in Tuscan. You tie off a safety rope, lean with both hands, and drive a new oak dowel through the joint. When it seats, you feel vibration hum along the timber like a purr. Saved, for now. Evening edges in, an indigo shade spilling behind rooftops. But we're not done. Tonight is pay tallies. Each worker must present his notched stick to the pay clerk to record days labored. Lose your tally, lose your wage. You line up with dozens, exchanging jokes to mask anxiety. The clerk, pouch like a pregnant goat at his belt, scans each stick against his ledger. When he reaches you, he pauses. 2 extra notches? You explain overtime, carving gargoyles. He counts calluses on your hand as proof, nods, and piles 2 small lead tokens onto your palm. Enough to send home for your child's new boots. Relief tastes sweeter than mead. Dusk now. The choir gathers for Compline under temporary canvas to keep dew off parchment. Torches flicker, illuminating faces. Carpenters, masons, washerwomen, even children chasing each other through tool piles. They all hush as the choir sings In Paradisum. High notes float through beam skeletons, echoing like a promise.
One day this space will cradle sound in polished stone and glass. For now, it must settle for starlight and sawdust.
After prayers, some head to alehouses. You head to the loft, a dormitory tucked under the roof of the Mason's Lodge. Straw mattresses line the floor, each marked with a sigil: fish, star, hammer. Yours is a chipped chalice. Before sleep, you pull out parchment, quill, and write home. Stones rose today a man's height. Wind tried to steal them, but we were quicker. Sent coin with courier, buy wool stockings for winter. Tell the littles I saw a bell that sings truer than the nightingale. I will carve their names in a hidden corner where no rain may wash them. You sprinkle sand to dry ink, roll the letter. Across the loft, Leonard snores like a malfunctioning bellows. Isabeau sharpens a hoof-pick by torchlight. Somewhere outside, a night watchman taps his horn, 3 knocks on wood, sign people still breathing. Moon's breath hangs in the frosty dawn like steam from a cracked cauldron, each plume a silent complaint about the hoof that still throbs beneath his weight. Before we deal with that, quick housekeeping. If your ears are wrapped in headphones and your spine's wrapped in blankets, poke that like button till it rinses. Smash subscribe if you haven't, because the next bell we raise could clang while you're busy scrolling cat memes. And while you're down there, type where you're listening from and what unholy hour the clock reads. High retention is our scaffolding. Comments are the mortar that keeps it from crumbling. Now, tighten your cloak because the site is already alive and trouble trots on 4 legs. First light glints off the slate-blue river. Porters chant in Breton as they push sledges stacked with freshly rough-hewn limestone. But the rhythm falters when they reach the ox team. Moon refuses to budge. His injured left forehoof oozes like uncorked sap. Isabeau kneels in the mud, muttering tender curses in Occitan, inspecting the swelling. She catches your eye between strands of hair and mouths one word: infected. No ox, no sled. No sled, no column drums. No drums, no tower tomorrow. Simple math, horrible outcome. The foreman, Etienne, pinches the bridge of his nose as if he could squeeze a better reality from his skull. "We'll fetch a farrier," he grumbles, but everyone knows the nearest lives 3 leagues south, and swollen hooves don't wait politely. Enter Brother Matthew, the cathedral's makeshift surgeon. Half monk, half butcher, all nerve. He appears carrying a leather roll of tools that jingle like a traitor's chains. "We must lance," he says, voice calm as rain. "Or you might as well pen a mass for a dead ox." Isabeau's knuckles whiten on Moon's bridle. Her livelihood grazes on that beast's every heartbeat. While Matthew assembles a fire to heat his iron probe, you and Leonard fetch a half-barrel of bitter ale, the only anesthetic Moon will get. Oxen can drink more than knights, so you keep tipping the ladle until Moon's eyes glaze. Around you, labor halts in a widening circle. Even the quarrier's hammer hesitates mid-swing. No one wants Moon to suffer, but no one wants the tower to fail either. Mathieu plunges his curved awl into the glowing brazier until it reddens like sunset. Then he lifts the hoof, mutters a prayer to Saint Eligius, patron of farriers and other brave fools, and drives the awl straight through the soul. The hiss is louder than any forge. Brewing infection meets sizzling iron. Moon bucks once, shakes the earth.
but ale and ropes hold. Viscous pus and black blood spurt onto the straw like spilled ink. The crowd exhales as if holding shared lungs. Mathieu salts the wound with powdered vine charcoal and wraps it in linen. "Walk him," he orders. Ysabeau leads Moon in a slow circle. The beast limps, but the heartbreaking hitch is softer now. Crisis contained for the moment. Etienne claps you, Leonard and Isabeau on the shoulder. Back to work, we're eating daylight. But hearts still pound, so he grants a bonus. Double rations of hazelnut bread at Sext. Morale matters almost as much as mortar. Speaking of mortar, today's mix includes an experimental ingredient, horsehair. Master Guillaume, the architect, claims it'll limit shrink cracks when the crossing vault cures. The mortar crew reacts the way cats react to baths, hissing, skeptical, but they obey. They stir the horsehair in with lime putty and river sand until it looks like porridge from an angry barber. Meanwhile, excitement brews in the sculpture yard. The rumored Burgundian, Master Arnaud, sets up shop. He arrives with a battered chest, 3 apprentices, and the air of a man who hears angels gossiping in stone. He is slender, wearing a cloak dyed so deep a red it's almost black. Pockets bulge with chisels that gleam like frozen moonbeams. He sketches on a wax tablet an angel whose wings curl inward like shells and whose lips nearly smile. "My figures breathe," he proclaims. Drogo snorts, still unconvinced. Arnaud's first commission is carving the high vault keystone for the transept rib, the boss all eyes will tilt toward during Mass. Guillaume wants a tetramorph, but Arnaud proposes adding a hidden 5th creature, a humble lamb, curled in the negative space between wings. Humility bears the others, he says. Guillaume strokes beard, shrugs assent. "You're assigned as Arnaud's stone courier. Fetch him blocks of Caen limestone, small enough for detail, yet strong enough to survive centuries of candle smoke. At the quarry sled, you inspect each block, tapping it with your pointed pick. A clear ring means no hidden faults." Arnaud thanks you in a Burgundian accent thick as barley stew. "Stone chooses its sculptor," he murmurs. You choose not to argue. Before noon, the wind keens through the half-finished Clara story like a choir warming scales. Guillaume wants a wind tower test. He and the carpenters rig a linen banner atop the scaffold to study turbulence patterns. If the cloth whips too violently, buttresses need beefing up. You climb with them, deploying the banner, crimson silk stitched with a golden St. Michael, then perch on a beam to watch. The banner snaps but does not shred. Guillaume smiles like a relieved father. Geometry has won another skirmish against chaos. Bell for Sext tolls. Workers scramble down for bread, bean pottage, and the promised hazelnut loaf. At trestle tables, gossip hops like fleas. "I heard the English king will tax wool again. Good for linen trade here." Did you see Arnaud's chest? Said he keeps a relic of St. Luke's thumb inside. Thumb? Could carve wood itself, then. You savor crust dotted with nuts as sweet as memory. Leonard demonstrates a parlor trick, cracking hazelnuts between bicep and forearm. Applause circles. Foreman rolls eyes but secretly approves. The sight buzzes again. Post-lunch,
Etienne splits the workforce. Half raise scaffold on the north aisle. Half assist Arnaud roughing out the angelic boss. You volunteer for sculpture, eager to witness breathing stone. Arnaud sets the first guideline. Points, chisel strikes mapping main planes of the figure. He lifts a small drill, pierces shallow holes marking eye corners, wingtips, lamb's ears. Every tap rings like a delicate bell. He tilts his head, listening as though each chip whispers back. Stone tells truth, he says. Lie even slightly, and it fractures. You ask how he learned such craft. He tells of a monastery in Cluny where he sculpted gargoyles during a siege. Shellfire, the stone kind from trebuchets, forced creative solutions. One gargoyle's mouth doubled as an arrow loop. Defenders fired through it while rainwater spewed over invaders. Form must serve function, he says, winking. By nones, moon returns, dragging a lighter sled, hoof bandaged but determined. Cheers ripple. Isabeau rides aboard, tossing wood shavings like confetti. Crisis seems behind until Seraphin, the ledger clerk, sprints up waving parchment. Royal inspectors arrive tomorrow, she gasps. Suddenly, every loose railing, every missing scaff brace looks like gallows bait. Etienne orders emergency audit. All workers scour site for hazards. You and Leonard secure a rope hatch over the nave, tightening knots until fingers bleed. Drogo checks every corbel seat. Guillaume drafts a fresh elevation drawing to dazzle inspectors' eyes away from muddy pathways. The energy shifts from daily devotion to frantic perfection. Compline creeps in violet twilight. Choir rehearses under canvas again, voices hushed to preserve throats for Inspector Day. They practice a new motet, Vene Creator Spiritus. Its rising thirds mimic scaffolds reaching heaven. Arnaud listens, sculpting to the rhythm. With each measure, Angel's face softens as though warmed from within. Drogo, arms crossed, finally mutters, "Maybe it does breathe." Night, but no rest. Etienne declares optional overtime, volunteers only, but you know what that means. Torchlight looms along planks, hammers echo in the dark. You join the carpenters, fitting an extra ledger beam along the aisle. Shadows dance huge against unfinished walls, resembling giants of old legend come to help. Midnight snack. Onions roasted in embers, sprinkled with salt. You share with Pietro, the Tuscan carpenter, who confesses fear of heights despite living on scaffold. He prays to Saint Joseph each morning. You promise to carve Joseph's name hidden beneath a future boss. By starlight, you check on Arnaud one last time. He wipes dust from the angel's cheek. Under flickering torch, the stone indeed seems to inhale. He nods at you. Tomorrow, inspectors will look up and see themselves judged kindly. He packs tools, locks chest, saintly thumb safe inside. Finally, loft time. You collapse onto straw, limbs buzzing. Leonard snores, instant aria. You scribble letter home. Ox recovered, angel emerging, but king's men come. Pray they see glory, not splinters. Seal with candle wax. Silence should greet dawn, but the hammers have been whispering all night, coaxing dowels into place like priests soothing restless souls.
Lanterns sway above the nave, making the half-built vaults glow as though sunrise has snuck indoors and can't find the exit. Good, you're already awake. Before we do anything else, do me a tiny favor. Nudge that like button the way you'd tap a chisel to see if the stone rings true. It's the easiest way to keep this channel's choir loft funded. And if you're new here, smash subscribe like a mason testing granite. Finally, drop a comment. Tell us the coldest job you ever had to finish before breakfast. All right, pull your cloak tighter, because today the king's inspectors arrive, and every heartbeat on this scaffold is a gamble.
A bell in town clangs prime. Etienne, the foreman, surveys the sight with the expression of a man hiding a dragon behind a tapestry. He dispatches runners, sweep the sawdust, oil the winch, polish your manners. Far below, village children line up to watch, clutching crusts of rye in mittened hands. They sense spectacle. Children always do.
Guillaume the architect paces amid scrolls laid across a trestle like wounded soldiers. He mutters about thrust lines and voussoirs, checks the wind tower banner again, still crisp, still snapping due east. He forces a grin onto his beard. If that cloth tears today, he whispers to you, I'll take holy orders tomorrow.
Up on the northern clerestory, a problem pops like a splinter. A wedge-shaped stone, part of the window tracery, sits half a thumb too proud. Drogo, the master mason, notices first. He tries a mallet tap, but the block refuses to budge. The inspector's keen eyes will find that protrusion faster than a friar finds the wine cellar. You hurry to fetch a puncheon bar while Drogo gathers wedges. A single misset voussoir can ripple cracks through the arch like lightning through oak. While you scramble, 3 riders crest the hill. Their cloaks flutter imperial blue, stitched with lilies. Royal auditors. Village gossip said 5. Looks like we got 3. Small mercy. They dismount at the west porch, ignoring mud with practiced detachment. One carries a leather folio, one a measuring rod banded in brass, and the third, the senior, leans on a cane tipped with silver, fashioned into a griffin's talon. He stares up, squints, and says nothing. Silence can weigh more than verdicts. By the time you reach Drogo, sweat already dampens his collar. Together you wedge the puncheon beneath the rebel stone and heave. The voussoir shifts with a groan like a monk waking late for matins. Drogo slides a sliver of poplar behind it. The face now flushes perfect, chalk outline restored. He exhales the way men do when they walk off a battlefield alive. Below, Sister Aveline organizes a welcoming choir. 30 novices in white wimples, breath fogging the cold air. Their chant, a simple Kyrie, floats upward, mingling with the smell of lime dust and hot pitch. Guillaume signals, let the song distract the inspectors while we finish tidying. But auditors are like hawks. They admire the tune, yet look past it. The youngest steps onto the wooden stair tower, testing each tread with the caution of someone who has fallen through rotten boards before. You hurry down to meet them halfway, offering a safety rope like a polite spider. Mind your cap, you say, wind catches up there. He frowns as though you suggested treason and keeps climbing. On the nave floor, Brother Matthew and Ysabeau have relocated Moon the ox to a makeshift corral behind the south porch.
His hoof bandage bleeds faintly, but Moon chews straw in stoic defiance of veterinary odds. The middle inspector notices the animal, approaches, and peers at the bandage. "Injury?" he asks. Matthew bows. "Treated with iron lance, sir. Recovery underway." The inspector sniffs the air, perhaps hoping infection smells like poor management. Matthew meets his gaze unblinking. After a pause, the man nods and scribbles something. Could be praise, could be doom. Paper is a tricky mirror. Higher up, you escort the senior inspector, Master Raymond, onto the main scaffold walkway. His cane taps rhythms against planks. He refuses ropes. "Spent 20 years on cathedrals," he says, voice full of gravel and rain. "If I fall now, it's only gravity collecting a debt." He stops before Arnaud's angelic boss, which sits under linen to protect from dust. Raymond lifts the cloth. The stone angel seems to glow even in shadow, subtle smile catching dawn. He grunts, could be admiration, could be gas. Burgundian work? Arnaud, who materialized like a well-timed apparition, bows. "Yes, master, and a lamb for humility." He guides Raymond's finger to the hidden creature cradled between wings. The inspector's eyes soften by half a candle width. He returns the cover and marks his parchment. Just then, a clatter rises from the hoist tower. The capstan crew yells, a hemp cable frays with a sound like cloth ripping. Everyone freezes. A cradle loaded with slate tiles dangles above the choir roof, held by only 2 strands. A heartbeat of suspension. Then the strands snap. Tiles plummet, smashing through a section of roof where, mercifully, no one stands. Still, shards skitter across beams, one ricocheting into a carpenter's calf. Blood dots oak like wine. Panic sparks, workers scatter, inspectors raise eyebrows so high they nearly leave their faces. Etienne's shout slices the chaos. "Shoring! Clear the aisle!" You and Leonard rush with ropes to secure the broken cradle. Mathieu pushes through with linen and honey salve for the injured carpenter. Within minutes, triage ends, wreckage cleared, and Etienne orders an immediate cable replacement with a thicker sisal coil kept for emergencies. Inspectors observe everything, no expression, but their quills scratch. Afternoon sun tumbles through traceries, casting rose-petal light. Guillaume gathers inspectors in the chapter house to present plans for the west facade towers. You stand by the door, guard and gopher. Guillaume unfurls a vast parchment, elevations traced in red ink, buttresses numbered, spire weights annotated. He speaks of load paths, wind shear, stone provenance. Raymond interjects, "Why no granite footings beneath the south tower? Sandstone will settle." Guillaume's reply is smooth. He's already specified oak grillage and lead sheet damp proofing. He produces samples, even notes from soil borings, rare thoroughness. Raymond nods slowly, scratching the griffin foot of his cane against the floor like a cat sharpening claws. Outside, the choir rehearses again, louder, Veni Sancte Spiritus. Their crescendo flows through arches, vibrating ropes. Singers know inspectors love harmony. Can't hurt to gild the audit with angelic sopranos. Meanwhile, Arnaud's apprentices carve capitals depicting craftsmen at labor. One chisels, one hoists, one sings. Meta-sculpture, the building celebrating its builders. You deliver a pitcher of watered wine. They toast you with dusty smiles. Then trouble's second inning. Clouds roll from the west, bruised and swaggering. A gust topples a ladder against the north aisle scaffold. No injuries, but Raymond senses opportunity. "Your weather lashings?" he asks. Etienne escorts him to tie-off points, freshly tightened that morning. Still, the storm might test them. Rain begins, fat drops darkening wood. Etienne orders tarp sheets slung over mortar tubs to prevent lime washout. Workers dash, securing canvas with iron cleats. You slip, nearly tumble off the ledger, but catch a tie rope, heart drumming like timpani. Thunder cracks. Inspector juniors exchange nervous glances, perhaps imagining headlines. "Royal auditors killed by God's own percussion." Raymond stands serene, face spattered, watching how ropes hold. They do. Guillaume joins him, soaked, pointing to wind tower banner that now whips but holds fast. Raymond's lips purse. Approval or indigestion? Hard to tell. Rain quits as abruptly as it started. Sun emerges, gilding every rivulet of water into molten brass. Workers cheer. Etienne quickly orders resumption. Mortarmen resume pointing joints before damp seeps out. Carpenters wedge drying pegs. Time is a rude landlord demanding rent. Sexed again. Kitchen boys bring cauldrons of chickpea stew, thick with garlic and rosemary. Inspectors invited. Protocol. They accept wooden bowls, eat among workers at scratched trestles. Conversation sparks.
"Drogo, you ever built at Charters, master?"
Yes, lost 2 fingers to frostbite during the winter vault pour. Workers lean closer. Men with scars trust men with scars. Report forms. Etienne seizes moment, proposes a walkthrough of the bell frame, showing off pioneering truss design. Over stew, Raymond agrees. Good. Momentum leans our way. Bell frame sits atop the crossing tower skeleton, reached by a vertical ladder so long it could double as Jacob's vision. Raymond insists on climbing. You follow, tying rope around his waist for safety. He scowls, but permits. Timber creaks, but holds. At the top, wind hisses like dragons gossiping. The frame, massive oak beams pegged in St. Andrew crosses, gleams with beeswax polish. Guillaume explains how shock loads from swinging bells dissipate through diagonal braces into masonry. Raymond listens, eyes tracing pegs. He taps a brace, listens to resonance. Solid. Then, surprising everyone, he laughs. "First sound design I've seen where the bells won't pull the tower apart." He signs his parchment before descent. Back on ground, inspectors convene in the porch. They whisper, tally, seal notes. Finally, Raymond clears throat. "Foreman, master builder, architect, our report is favorable. Repairs needed to hoist cabling and ledger bracing must be logged and re-inspected in 1 month. But progress and safety, commendable." Collective exhale nearly unroofs the place. Someone begins Psalm 150. Soon all join. Even Raymond hums. The auditors depart under late-day sun. Workers dance an improvised farandole around Moon's corral. You fetch pitcher of cider, share with Etienne who rarely drinks. He toasts, "To ropes that held." Drogo adds, "To stones that listened." Arnaud, raising chisels like tuning forks, declares, "To angels that breathe." Evening chores. Carpenters jack the broken roof panel, nail fresh slate. Quarry sleds return empty. Tomorrow they'll fetch blue-veined marble for altar steps. You help Isabeau rewrap Moon's hoof, swelling nearly gone. She brushes his flank, singing Occitan lullaby about lavender fields and fearless oxen.
Compline. Choir now sings Inside Nave beneath temporary canvas vault. Acoustics already haloed. Candles flicker. Workers kneel among shavings and dust. The building itself seems to pray. Nightfall yet again brings overtime, this time voluntary and joyful. Some cut joints for the next day, others paint tracings on mason's loft. You choose to help Arnaud refine lamb curls. Delicate flicks of claw chisel until stone fur feels soft under fingertip. Arnaud confides, I once carved a smile on a demon in Vézelay. Pilgrims thought it blasphemy. But a demon that grins shows it knows its place outside the light. You realize his lamb hidden between wings is a similar wink. Over the scaffold, Pietro hangs small tin stars he punched during lunch. They catch moonlight so night crews can see footing. Improvised constellations guide your steps. You climb to clerestory for fresh air. Town below sleeps, except tavern windows glowing amber. You spot inspectors in one, likely toasting paper victories. Midnight again, but energy still crackles. Etienne authorizes hot spiced wine. Cloves, cinnamon, a blade of mace. The cauldron bubbles. Workers refill wooden cups. Leonard plays rebec. Seraphine the clerk claps rhythm. Even Drogo stomps boots. You dance with Ysabeau among chips of stone. Laughter reverbs off pillars like future organ notes. The moon has tiptoed away and left the sky the color of raw lead. But hammers are already talking in their bright metallic dialect. You stretch, knuckles cracking like kindling, and smell breakfast drifting up the scaffold. Barley porridge thick with honey, carried in wooden pails by yawning apprentices who have plaster dust in their hair instead of dreams. Before you grab a bowl, do the cathedral and this channel a kindness. Press the like button the way a mason presses a gold leaf into a halo. It helps keep our digital choir funded. And if you're wandering in for the first time, hit subscribe like a bell ringer tugging for matins. Then drop a comment telling me your favorite piece of music to work by. Trust me, every little ping helps cement these stories in the great vault of YouTube memory. Down in the nave, Etienne the foreman twirls a chalk line like a lasso, marking the day's most delicate alignment. By sunset, the last rib of the central vault must rise, lock, and cure. After that, only heaven can budget. Guillaume the architect, eyes purple with sleepless triumph, has stacked parchments in order of panic priority. On top, a sketch of the final keystone, a floral boss big enough to cradle a goose. Below, a prayer, hastily scribbled. Even the mathematicians plead with angels when the margin for error narrows to hairbreadths. Workers finish gulping porridge, wipe lips on sleeves, and form a ragged procession toward the hoist tower. Singing begins spontaneously. First one tenor, then an alto harmonizing through a mouthful of oats. The song is Gaudeamus Omnes, a tune about rejoicing even when the world's ankles ache. Perfect. You shoulder a hemp rope and climb. 12 stories of ladder later, wind slaps your cheeks awake.
The dawn horizon blushes raspberry behind the unfinished buttresses, making each flyover arch look like a bridge for swallows. Up here, you can see the whole town stirring. A thatcher straightening his back, a baker tapping loaves for hollowness, children chasing each other around a cart piled with cabbages. They glance up and wave at you, the skywalkers. The final volt rib lies on a sled, wrapped in linen like a newborn titan. Arnaud and Drogo examine it for hairline flaws. They find none, but still draw a cross on the underside. Insurance payable in faith. Etienne clears his throat. Lift at Prime's third peal. That's in 20 heartbeats. You tie your glove lace tighter, then check the hoist brake. Oak pawl, iron gear, grease of sheep tallow and beeswax. The capstan crew, the strongest ox-shouldered lads, take places. Brother Matthew blesses the rope, sprinkling wine because holy water froze overnight in its bronze ewer. Wine steams, perfuming the morning with miracles and raisins. Prime bells ring once, twice, thrice. Capstan bars thrust forward, men grunt in practiced rhythm. The sled inches upward, rope thrumming like a cathedral string. Everyone goes quiet. Even the sparrows hush as the rib clears parapet height. Halfway up, a gust bullies the load, swinging it toward the South Clerestory. You and Leonard yank guide ropes, boots skidding on frost-slick planks. The stone steadies. Below, townsfolk gasp in unison. 30 mothers clutch shawls closer. Arnaud mutters a curse so elegant it could belong in a psalm. At last, the rib hangs level with its intended perch. Etienne's palms rise, a conductor stalling an orchestra. Drogo and 2 nimble journeymen step onto a cantilevered cradle known grimly as the Widowmaker. No safety ropes, weight distribution would skew the lift. Only faith and footwork. They shuffle the rib across greased rollers until it kisses its neighbors. A marble thud reverberates down your bones. But the fit is tight by a fraction of barleycorn. If it will not slide flush, the entire vault might twist later under winter snows. Drogo whispers, "Need a whisper cut." Arnaud signals for a small adze. He shaves a translucent curl from the mortise shoulder, stone peel as thin as communion wafer. You hold your breath. Everyone does. Drogo taps his mallet once, tunk, and the rib seats home with a sigh like a satisfied beast. Cheers explode. Etienne exhales the week's angst right off the scaffold. Now for the keystone. It rests below, draped in crimson cloth, carved with vines, grapes, and a song thrush whose beak opens to reveal a tiny hole, later to hold a candle stub during feast days, so saints can dance in flame light. Guillaume insists the boss must go up only when workers' voices are steady, hearts calm. That means lunch break. In the refectory shed, boards sag under trenchers of salt pork, pickled onions, boiled turnips, and rye bread hard enough to use as wedges. Pietro the carpenter juggles 2 oranges, the only color brighter than sandstone, and claims he bought them off a Florentine peddler who swore they grew from a tree watered exclusively with choir-boy tears. Laughter ricochets. Even Grimmond, the habitually dour sawyer, smiles through splinters in his beard. Conversation drifts. Who will ring the bells first? Whether the new gargoyle resembles the abbot more than the donkey? Rumors of a comet sighted over Paris? Ysabeau, brushing Moon the ox's winter coat, jokes that if a star falls into their lime kiln, they might finally invent war mortar. Everyone toasts that insanity with watered ale.
Afternoon sun sharpens shadows. Workers return to heights. You position yourself at the capstan again. This time, half the town gathers, singing Te Deum in a key that wobbles but wins hearts. The crimson-wrapped boss ascends like a royal secret. As it nears, Etienne waves silence. Arnaud and Drogo re-enter the Widowmaker cradle. You feed them wedges, wooden mallets, packets of lead wool for bedding. They lower the boss into the opening, an oculus ringed by the ribs you've slaved over for years. It pauses, suspended in dawn's last gold. Drogo calls, "Lower 2 fingers." The capstan crew eases. Stone settles. There is a sound I can't describe, halfway between thunder and a cathedral sigh. The ribs transmit weight into the walls. The walls lean back, accepting. For the first time, the nave breathes as one body. A flock of pigeons, startled from rafters, loops through the vault, as if inspecting new real estate. Etienne lifts both arms. The vault holds. Cheers thrust upward, hats and hammers wave. Someone begins ringing a handbell until the great West Tower bells can be hung. The whole job site trembles with joy. But celebration breaks when Sister Avalon, pale, approaches. Her choir boys have been practicing Latinate carols atop the rood screen, and one has slipped, twisted an ankle, maybe cracked. No rest for bone-setting knowledge. Matthew gathers splints. Isabeau fetches vinegar, honey, lint. You help carry the boy, Henri, freckles like pepper, onto a blanket near the warming brazier. He whimpers, but tries to sing still. Voice cracks. Mathieu probes. Foot swells purple. "No fracture, just dislocation," he murmurs. Dislocation requires swift reduction. Henri bites a leather strap while Mathieu tugs the foot, twist and pull until a pop echoes. Henri gasps, then exhales relief. Applied compress, yarrow poultice. Within minutes, the boy sniffles but manages a smile. Cathedral builds bodies as well as arches. Mid-afternoon. Guillaume summons you. The inspector's final document arrived by courier pigeon, wax seal still warm. He breaks it before gathered masters. Verdict? Workmanship exemplary, structural sufficiency confirmed. Cathedral to receive additional royal tithe. Applause, even Moon snorts approval. Bonus, each master announced a small coin stipend, enough for new boots or a dowry chicken. With constraints lifted, Guillaume authorizes the ceremonial topping out feast on the scaffolding itself. Food, candles, music under the new roof. You're tasked with hanging lanterns from protruding scab rails. Etienne warns, no sparks near shavings. Good advice for life. Dusk paints window tracery lilac. Lanterns speckle like ember constellations. Tables appear, planks over trestles, laden with spit-roasted lamb, barley cakes, wheels of cheese, jugs of Hippocras wine steeped with cinnamon. Workers climb laughing, balancing plates.
They sit with feet dangling above sacred floor that will echo pilgrim steps long after their bones turn to dust.
Arnaud unveils a surprise, a 3-foot sugar confection shaped like the cathedral itself. Imported sugar from Cyprus, courtesy of a merchant cousin. Many have never tasted sugar beyond medicinal syrups. Gasps follow.
Music begins. Leonard on rebec, Seraphine on shawm, Pietro's tin stars tinkling in the breeze like percussion. Choir boys, ankle-bound but game, join in. The refrain swells, non nobis domine. Under new vaults, voices ricochet, multiply, become galaxies of sound. Workers blink tears, salt in dust.
Guillaume stands on a barrel, raises a silver hammer. To every callus, every shattered nail, every song hummed against fear. The roof above us belongs to God, but the stories it shelters belong to you. He bangs hammer against keystone gently, a benediction. Then, unexpected hush. Etienne steps forward, holding a small wooden box. We honor those who never saw today, he says. Names read. Beatrice, the rope splicer, who succumbed to fever. Odo, who fell when scaffold plank cracked. René, crushed under wagon. Each name answered by workers. Present. A candle lit for each, placed into the thrush's carved beak above. A line of tiny flames, a necklace of memory around the vault. Feast resumes, but softer, richer. Stories surface. How Beatrice once raced Moon the ox and almost won. How Odo carved a tiny heart inside a hidden stone. People laugh through tears, building cathedrals inside their chests. Later, Raymond the inspector reappears, cloak dark against lantern glow. He offers a cask of Alsatian white as peace token. Workers cheer. He sips, wipes mustache, and addresses crowd. I have judged many works, but seldom met craftsmen who sing every stone into place. Keep singing. The king's gold can't match that mortar. He leaves before applause finishes. Old man's exit. Midnight edges close. Lantern oil low. Songs slur. Couples sneak to shadowed chapels. Promises whispered as fingers trace mortar lines still wet. Pietro strings a lullaby, hammers at last, truly silent. You wander the empty nave. The vault overhead feels alive, a stone sky with its own stars, tin and lantern. You reflect on every blister, every near miss, every winter breath frozen into scarf. All of it culminated in this echo you now hear, your echo. Buildings, like stories, only finish when echoes stop. At the crossing, you meet Isabeau feeding Moon sprigs of rosemary. He'll pull bells up next month, she says, patting flank. You nod, stroke warm hide. Moon chews thoughtfully, perhaps composing his own hymn. Outside, frost, silver plates the buttresses. You climb one last time to the roof ridge. Town lies beneath like a quilt of candle sparks. Beyond, fields, forests, unknown tomorrow. The cathedral stands between, bridge of stone, song trapped inside, waiting to burst every morning with sunlight through glass that isn't even installed yet. You shiver, but not from cold.
Time to close our own scaffolding here on the channel. If this journey over 7 nights, through hunger, hazard, harmony, moved you, let the algorithm know. Click like so it shines like that sugar model in our nose hands. Share the video with a friend who loves dusty miracles. Comment the single word keystone so I know you were here when the last rib locked into place. And if you're willing, ring the notification bell. We'll soon explore other forgotten worlds, other songs in stone.
For now, climb down softly. Keep the lantern of imagination shielded from the wind. And remember, every thumbprint you've left on a tool, every lyric you've hummed under strain, every kindness you've tucked between tasks, they're your own cathedrals, invisible maybe, but vast, and they will outlast the inspection of centuries.
Rest well, builder. Dawn will need your hands again.